Welcome back to my podcast. In today's episode, we will explore a shocking urban legend, the truth about the apocalyptic flood. Since the release of the movie 2012 and 2009, there have been whispers about an impending apocalypse. Some claim that 2012 is not just a movie plot. In fact, the CIA and global elites have long known the secrets of the apocalypse. Since the time of Darwin, these elites have been secretly studying this topic. By the 1960s, they had uncovered all the truths but chose to keep them secret, continuing to assert that Darwin's theory of evolution is correct and that the Earth is fine. However, some rebellious geologists have come forward to loudly warn of a catastrophic flood coming soon. They believe that natural wonders like the Eye of the Sahara, the Sphinx, and the Pumapunku are not just geological marvels, but evidence of a massive flood that occurred in the past, witnessing the apocalyptic flood. In 1923, Dr. J. Harlan Bretz, after a 12-year study of the Columbia Plateau, published a paper. He stated that floods created everything, with the ravines of the Columbia Plateau and Puget Sound in Seattle all being evidence of prehistoric floods. These barren deserts were not naturally formed valleys, but were once riverbeds, scars on the earth caused by enormous floods. Soon after, Dr. Bretz debated in Washington, where critics used mathematical formulas to question him. They calculated that to create what he called the channeled scablands, it would require 170 billion cubic meters of water flow per day. They asked Dr. Bretz, where did the water come from? Although Dr. Bretz could not specify the source of the water, he insisted that the signs of the flood were undeniable. Critics seized the opportunity to become judges, questioning his theory further and calculating that it would need over 2 trillion cubic meters of water, reiterating the question of the water source. Ultimately, Dr. Bretz could not overcome this mathematical challenge and was disgraced as a proponent of catastrophism. Yet 40 years later, another scientist boldly supported the theory of catastrophism and published a popular book. However, the CIA quickly intervened to ensure the book was banned before it could spread widely. There are rumors that the banned book answered Dr. Bretz's questions about the source of the water and revealed the truth about the prehistoric floods. Some even claim that the CIA itself believes in the theory of catastrophism, having discovered the water source and the secrets of the apocalyptic flood based on Dr. Bretz's research, but chose to keep it secret from the public. So what exactly does this banned book reveal? Why was it named the Adam and Eve story? No one knew the specific contents at the time. However, in 1965, when the CIA banned the book, the same geologists who had questioned Dr. Bretz collectively went to the Columbia Plateau. They stood before the terrain known as the channeled scablands and expressed their belated respect and support for Dr. Bretz, as if they had suddenly become supporters of catastrophism. What was going on? Then, in 1972, even more shocking news came. NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey jointly released the first satellite photo of the channeled scablands on the Columbia Plateau, and the image was exactly the same as the map Dr. Bretz had drawn in 1923. They decided to vindicate Dr. Bretz. By 1979, the Geological Society of America awarded Dr. Bretz, then 97 years old, the Penrose Medal. Later, Dr. Bretz changed his statement, claiming that it was not just one flood, but 7 floods that gradually eroded the Columbia Plateau. Does this mean some sort of reconciliation was reached? They acknowledged Dr. Bretz's research findings, while asking him to change his theory from 1 flood to 7 floods to facilitate further work. Moreover, what exactly is the chilling theory of catastrophism? Although these stories were full of mystery in the 60s and 70s, unfortunately, under the manipulation of power, all stories were gradually forgotten until 2013. That year, influenced by the Freedom of Information Act, the CIA suddenly declassified thousands of pages of historical documents on its official website, including a sci-fi novel from 1965. When enthusiasts curiously opened this novel, they unexpectedly found that it was the Adam and Eve story from back then. Why bring up old stories suddenly? Hurriedly opening this forbidden book, it starts with, "In California, the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of water more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. With the force of 1,000 armies, the wind attacks, ripping, shredding everything in its supersonic bombardment. The unbelievable mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were but grains of sand." The book begins with descriptions of supersonic winds, which seem like science fiction, but are closely related to the origins of the flood. Let's continue. "Every living thing is ripped into shreds while being blown across the countryside, and the earthquake leaves no place untouched. In many places, the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire to add to the Holocaust. Within 3 hours, the fantastic wall of water moves across the continent, burying the wind-ravaged land under 2 miles of seething water, coast to coast. In a fraction of a day, all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours before. A few lucky ones who managed to find shelter from the screaming wind on the lee side of Pikes Peak watch the sea of molten fire break through the quaking valleys below. The raging waters follow, piling higher and higher, steaming over the molten earth fire, and rising almost to their feet. Only great mountains such as this one can withstand the cataclysmic onslaught. We have discovered that North America was not the only region to suffer major disasters. In the Adam and Eve story, the author describes massive catastrophes in South America, Europe, Asia, and Siberia. The land and waters in these regions mercilessly destroyed all traces of civilization, leaving the surviving humans to return to the Stone Age and start anew, much like Adam and Eve. This is the deeper meaning behind the title, The Adam and Eve Story. But do such mega catastrophes really exist? The book raises questions with its mention of supersonic winds and seemingly illogical floods and fires. Why would the CIA ban such a seemingly absurd novel? Was it just because it promoted the theory of catastrophism? What exactly is catastrophism? To understand catastrophism, we need to go back to before Darwin's time. In 1812, when Darwin was only 3 years old, the prevailing theory was catastrophism, led by French Baron Georges Cuvier. That year, Cuvier published a work called Theory of the Earth, where he explained catastrophism through geology, comparative anatomy, and paleontology. Cuvier believed that the current appearance of the Earth, its biological and geological diversity, was largely shaped by sudden, short, extremely violent events, which could be local or global. Simply put, evolution suggests that the variety of species on Earth formed through a gradual process, including natural selection and survival of the fittest, whereas catastrophism rejects this gradual change. Catastrophism emphasizes that after a sudden great disaster, life naturally re-emerges in the new environment. For example, layers upon layers of evidence of massive floods have been found in the geological strata, corresponding with fossils of prehistoric animals like dinosaurs, woolly mammoths, and giant sloths that are now extinct. By comparing these fossils, experts have found that their physiological structures match the environmental conditions indicated by the strata at the time, such as higher oxygen levels, more extensive grasslands, and warmer temperatures. Catastrophism uses 3 types of evidence: geological layers, fossils, and comparative anatomy to explain why species in the geological strata suddenly went extinct and then suddenly reappeared. It shows that Earth's disasters are a natural law. After each major catastrophe, the species of one era die out, and new species naturally emerge in a never-ending cycle of nature. If we compare evolution and catastrophism side by side, we find that their positions in the scientific field are similar. Darwin's theory of evolution describes a process we cannot witness firsthand, just as we cannot see monkeys evolving into humans. Similarly, the global floods and subsequent rebirth of species described by catastrophism are also beyond our direct observation. Both are based on scientific theories rather than reproducible scientific laws. If we must compare, we might be more likely to witness an event described by catastrophism compared to the slow changes of evolution. But why was catastrophism labeled as anti-science just 50 years after Darwin proposed his theory of evolution? Part of the reason relates to religious beliefs. Catastrophism bears similarities to biblical descriptions, such as the story of the Great Flood and the Nephilim giants. This similarity may have caused catastrophism to be questioned within the scientific community. Additionally, limited by the technological level of Darwin's time, scientists of that era struggled to find evidence that could support a global catastrophe. Like the geologists who initially judged Dr. Bretz, who based their arguments on the gradual geological changes proposed by evolution, they failed to find the source of a massive flood. However, over time, scientists finally recognized Dr. Bretz's proposed mega-flood and found its source, a periodic ice age. At the end of the ice age, the ice dam of the Missoula Glacier Lake in the northern part of the Columbia Plateau burst, releasing over 2 trillion cubic meters of water, creating the channeled scablands on the plateau. Although this theory explained Dr. Bretz's source of water, there are still 2 puzzles unsolved. 1. What causes the periodicity of ice ages? Why could glaciers extend to the Columbia Plateau? 2. Is there real evidence for the global catastrophes mentioned in the Bible, Cuvier's theory, and the Adam and Eve story? What is the source of these disasters? It's likely that in the 1960s, when the Adam and Eve story was banned, the CIA and global elites had already researched and possibly found answers to these questions. That's all for today's podcast. Thank you for listening. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode.